Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talk Horror to Me. I'm one of your co hosts, Matt, and I'm joined here, obviously, as always, with Chrissy. Say hello. Hello.
Hello.
This week, we decided to, or this last however many weeks, it's been a hot minute. It's been a hot minute. It's been busy. Decided to watch Donnie Darko, of all things.
Well, it's classic.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's definitely a cult classic because it's one that didn't like make a ton in the theaters or anything like that. And you can definitely tell it's like, I guess, alienating in a way. It's not a film for everybody, I would argue, for sure. But uh, it's definitely stylistic. It's by a young director, and certainly makes you think. I would say is probably.
Well, this is classified, according to Wikipedia, as a science fiction psychological thriller. So, is that part of like, yeah, you're going to think about it. I guess it's sci fi because of the time travel aspect.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and
I don't
we'll
know.
have to get into
I don't
that
know
because I that's what
the
I
sci fi part of it, but
yeah.
okay, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some like sci-fi, albeit almost even religious elements to it that are, they touch on. Um,
Yep, yep.
but yeah, before we get too deep, should we just do the trailer and let it?
Let's do it. Let's
Okay,
see.
okay.
Let's watch. What is this Donnie Darko?
So I just realized this too that it is the trailer's in 4:3. This was I don't know. I'm assuming this wasn't in theaters in 4:3, but yeah, I just it stuck out to me the moment I saw this. I don't know if this is like a home film version trailer. I didn't really look at what kind of trailer I grabbed, but could be. It might be. I'm not crazy, am I? Like this movie was not in 4:3 while we watched it, was it? I don't think it was.
Not that I no,
Okay.
no, because I think I would notice that.
Yeah. Do you want to?
But there,
Yeah, go ahead.
so there's one thing I just want to say about this movie that I feel like in the past we've hit a lot on how like soundtrack doesn't really do anything for us. But as I'm watching this trailer, it's like I can hear the soundtrack in my head because it did like just such a good job of like setting the tone and the time and like the frame of mind for it and the mood. Like I think the soundtrack on this movie was like phenomenally used.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. There's a lot of things that like are definitely stand outish. And I wonder, I mean, we could touch on that a little bit, but I wonder if some of that just has to do with the youth of the director, that it's like,
Hmm.
gonna go big with certain things just because it's like, whatever, first movie, like, gotta do all these different things, and therefore they all kind of, come together, or what, where that really came from. But yeah.
Okay, so do you want to do a recap of the movie or do you want me to?
You know what? I'm gonna be 100% honest. Like watching through this, and I went back and I like cherry picked some scenes again to kind of watch them. This is still like, like there. I have some guesses on some stuff, but for the most part, I did not go and read a like, what does the end of Donnie Darko mean kind of thread or anything like that. Didn't do it. I just let it sit with me the way that I was sitting with me. Um, and went from there kind of thing. So I'll swap it over to the plot, to the plot slide, so you can kind of right there. But yeah, I go ahead. You can give it the synopsis, because again, I'm not the right person for that. I don't think I would give a completely different synopsis
Well,
than you would.
I think I am the right person for this because, as I told you earlier, I watched this movie 3 times. Because, like you said, it took us a bit between the last time we filmed and now, and I had kind of forgotten at one point because uh, just the way I watch movies is I need to be focused and determined, and I'm not, so I end up having to watch it multiple times and then piecing it together. But I actually got a good watch of this one. So, here's the best that I can remember. We meet this boy and he's like sleeping on the road and you're like what, and his family's all just like where's Donnie, why does he sleepwalk, and then you keep seeing him wake up in these different places and you're kind of following him, and then this catastrophic event happens where he should have died, he could have died, but because he wasn't in his room at the time, he survived. And so then you're going forward with this notion of like, he could have died at that time and he didn't. So all these things that he's experiencing are only happening because he survived, and how different it could have been, kind of thing. And then he starts like hearing this voice, and he sees this big bunny rabbit named Frank.
It doesn't really look like a bunny rabbit. It's definitely like a
It's like face and
horror
then like the
movie.
bunny suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then this Frank guy's like, the world's gonna end in blah 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 days, like on the, like October 30th, like 28 days, and he like,
Very
so
specific
then
time
Donnie
and
starts,
everything, right? Like it's
yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah, the world will end or something like that, and then so he starts talking to Frank, and going through like this like where he's being told to do these things, and he doesn't really remember doing them, but he does like a lot of vandalism type stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he like really impacts a lot of different people. He's dating this girl and blah blah blah. Long story short, at the end all these things come together, but the thing that like, I remember watching this as a kid and not really understanding and remembering much of it, but I did not pick up on the time travel aspect of it at all. Like, that was an element that was completely not in my brain when I was rewatching this. And I'm like, oh yeah, Drew Barrymore's in this. Oh yeah, I remember that part. But then it's like, whoa, where did this come from? Because I don't remember this part at all. But it kind of brings you to where he's realizing he shouldn't be there, and he's going through the motions of all these things in this book, where basically he's going to time travel back and reset the timeline in a way.
Well, and so that's where that's where I was trying to figure it out was I didn't read into it as time travel. And again, I didn't read on the movie. So I this is like just kind of based off of what was being said. I remember at one point because there are definitely some like religious undertones in it. And I know there's even a scene where Donnie tries to start talking about some like theoretical physics stuff with his science teacher, and it starts to turn to religion, and he's like, I can't actually talk to you about this because like I'd lose my job, sort of thing.
Well, I
And
took that as like, because he's teaching at a Catholic school,
yeah,
and because Donnie was like, basically I took it as like, this guy doesn't want to come off of like, this is the science behind it, and
right.
the other stuff isn't really relevant, because he could lose his job because he can't tell a student like, oh, I'm not actually religious, kind of
But
thing.
there were some different things that they called it, or they like at least referenced it in kind of the book that he was reading. I can't remember what it was, but there's a part where he starts like visually seeing. I don't know if you want to call it like a life force kind of thing, but they call it. Do you remember what it was called? It was like the God something or God touch or God travel or something.
Gosh,
You know what
you
I
know
mean?
what? I tried really hard to pay attention, because anytime it would like reference the book, it would show the page, and the text was mumbo jumbo to me. Like, I would read
Oh,
it and
I
be
can.
like, what?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. I just couldn't. So yeah, it's like a weird, like, watery, liquidy looking tunnel thing that shoots out from you. It
yeah,
actually reminded, for some reason, like The Abyss or some other movie that had like a weird
yep.
water tunnel thing. That it's like, that's what he was referring to with the science teacher when he was talking about, you know your future or where you will go, but you have choice in going there as long as you follow God's path. And I think he was seeing it as like,
Yeah, that's the path kind of thing. I well, and so the other thing that I remember they were talking about in the book too, there's a line. It almost felt kind of like a throwaway line, but it was mentioning that out of these multiple realities that the two cannot exist forever together, and that they will collapse upon each other to make one effectively. And
mm-hmm,
so that's
mm-hmm.
where I started thinking like, well, this doesn't it didn't strike me so much as time travel as it did like alternate reality, and that those two alternate realities could not exist together, and so there was no choice. But he found out that his was the one to collapse, and it would basically
Right.
merge
Yeah,
into
yeah,
another
yeah, yeah.
timeline. So in that,
Yeah, 'cause it's like that parallel universe thing.
yes,
Like,
yeah,
in the show Fringe,
I
where
have not seen
you have the
Fringe.
two parallel universes and one needs to ruin the other or something, like they can't both exist. It's that same principle.
Yeah, so
You should.
okay, so that's kind of what I was thinking about. So I mean, really, to back up, basically you're following Donnie, who's kind of this. He's sort of a popular riffraff kid. He's not like a great kid. He's gets into
Like, he's
trouble.
cute and he's smart, but like he's kind of a
He's
punk.
smart in that like emo dangerous way of like screw you mom and dad, kind of thing. Doesn't is really sort of a loner on his own. He doesn't get along with his sister. Um,
He's
and
not taking his
not taking his
medication.
medication. He's a horny
He
young lad.
uses the word ironic correctly.
Oh, does he? That didn't stick out to me either. Um, but yeah, and it's like the movie really kicks off with this. Like, I mean, I make the argument of like an edgy teenager, like 90s tone. Like, the start of this movie, the
Yeah.
first third of this movie, does not at all feel like the later half or later 2/3 of it at all. It's a completely different
The
vibe.
ending is hectic.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like this movie's so calm and comforting at the beginning. And then it's like, it's cute, the relationship the family has. And I think it's really fun that like Maggie Gyllenhaal plays his actual sister in the
Yeah.
movie.
Sister,
Okay, of
brother
Jake
sister
Gyllenhaal.
combo. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I
Okay, so let's getting into more of that.
oh, you want to get deep down? So let me go through the data real fast.
Yeah.
So it was directed by Richard Kelly, which I think I looked into, and it's like at the time that this movie came out, I think he was 26. So, and this was like his first kind of major motion picture. So 26-year-old
Nice.
to be having a theatrical release, or at least a movie with a budget of nearly $5 million, was like, that's a pretty big deal. And I think we kind of calculated, or at least I was trying to figure out, because I felt, again, I felt like some of this would have been something that would have been written by like a teenager or drafted by a teenager and go, oh yeah, this is so cool and edgy. And
Uh,
we figured at the time that the movie takes place, which is the 90s, the kids are in high school in the 90s. He would have been in high school in the 90s, um, effectively when he could have written this. So there are certain parallels to that in the director, which kind of like makes sense. But anyway, I digress. This came out in 2001. This was, I think, early 2001, because we were trying to figure out if this was like pre or post 9/11, and I think it was like March or something. Or maybe it was summer or
okay.
something like that. It was early 2001. Yeah, it's almost 2 hours long, hour and 53 minutes, so it's not crazy. Pacing wise, I'll get into later. But yeah, there's a budget about 5 million, and it took at the box office about 7.5 million. So it made
Oh,
money.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for an indie small budget
Right.
film. Um, I mean, at the time, I would argue 4.8 million was probably not an indie budget. That was probably like catastrophically huge for what a kid was getting handed to make this movie. But yeah, I don't know. The like early 2000s, late 90s was a weird time for cinema. They were still kind of taking risks on really weird nutso stuff, and this fit the bill. So um, let's jump over. Would you like to talk about the characters or the cinematography next? What do you think?
Let's get into the
Let's
characters.
get into the characters. All right. Uh, so really quickly, and then I'll let you get going. So Jake Gyllenhaal plays Donnie Darko, which, I mean, he went on to do a million different things. He's a very talented actor. And Maggie Gyllenhaal plays his sister in the movie, who's his sister in real life. So they kind of had a brother sister combo, which was kind of cool. There's definitely some other like notable people in here that you would recognize. Drew Barrymore being one of them, as she's one of the teachers that's in there. I think probably the other big one was Patrick Swayze. I don't know how Patrick Swayze signed on to something like this or why he did. But he did.
You're right.
Patrick Swayze was way big at the time, compared to what he would have needed to do with this. Um, yeah, James Duvall. There's definitely like a lot of notable people in here.
Seth Rogen.
Oh yeah, young Seth Rogen. I completely forgot about that. You're right. There's a young Seth Rogen in there, and I don't even have him on my list here. But
Mhm.
you will see even if you don't recognize some of the names, if you watch the movie, you'll be like, oh yeah, I totally know that guy from something. So, um, a lot of familiar faces.
And DeVay Chase, the younger sister to the Gyllenhaal children, fun fact, played Samara in the US version of The Ring.
Oh, really? Huh.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're making some connections here. Yeah. So I mean, basically, those are you've got a regular family dynamic between Jake Gyllenhaal and Maggie Gyllenhaal, and then he's got his two parents and the younger sister, and they live in, I would argue, your very suburban, middle
Ooh,
class
yeah.
'90s home.
Upper middle
Upper.
class for
That was just
sure.
middle class in the '90s. At least movies made it that way. Movies made the middle class
Okay,
seem
yeah,
like
you're
they.
right. That's what people thought everyone lived
Yes.
like. And the mom was probably one of my favorite characters. Like,
Oh yeah.
I she was great.
She had probably some of the most character personality, like character depth overall, because
Yeah.
she seemed to be much more of like grounded realist about things, and kind of emotional in the way that she reacted, both sternly and the dad is just kind of oblivious. They made it
Yeah, he's
oblivious
a
sitcom dad basically. The sister is like the f you Donnie, like kind of bullshit, like doesn't want anything to.
feminism.
Yeah, it's like really Donnie and the mom. This is definitely like a mother son relationship film in a lot of ways. It's the Hereditary before Hereditary. So yeah,
Oof.
yeah.
Ooh,
Ooh, I don't know,
gotta
chill
do it.
down my
Gotta do
spine
it.
there, but
Want to watch that scene with me? You know the one.
the one, the only scene in Hereditary. Um, But yeah, I mean, there too, they make the dad out to be in the enemy in Hereditary. They set the dad on fire, and here they, just make him out to a bumbling kind of idiot. But um,
He laughs a lot.
he laughs a lot. Yeah, he's probably the only smiling character in this movie. I didn't think about that, but the dad probably is the only one who smiles. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different characters. Drew Barrymore plays this almost provocatively horny high school teacher, which is
Yeah.
really weird.
She made me really uncomfortable a few times.
Yeah, it's so.
I don't remember her being in it that much either, though. I'm like, whoa, she was way more of this
She
movie
was
than I
gone.
remember.
Yeah, she was an influence on Donnie for sure. But that's the weird thing. That's where I'm saying like some of these characters almost seem like caricatures of like real people, and some of this feels like something a high school kid would draft. And
100%. Like the perspective of all the adult characters, especially like Patrick Swayze's character,
oh yeah,
dude, he did such a good
he
job.
nails it.
Oh my gosh. And that woman, what's her name? The PE teacher,
Yeah,
the one who transcends the mother teacher bridge or whatever.
yeah, she's
Oh
in.
my gosh, she's
She
ridiculous.
was in the Mindy Kaling project or whatever that was, the Mindy
She
project. Yeah,
was,
and she
yeah.
was great in that too. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, there's again, I think it's one of those things, and I don't know if that's like here's honestly like what I'm coming from. Here's what I think about that is like I feel like there is a good portion of this movie, like 60% of it, maybe all of it was written like when he was younger, getting out of the high school into college phase, right? I don't even know if he went to college, but
right.
that era. And there became a point where I'm sure in his mind he's like, well, as he matured, grew older, he's like, I need to have a more adult ending. And I feel like 60% of that movie stayed with that from that younger man writing era, and then the ending was a very more matured, thought out, adulty ending, and I think that's where like the blending of the overly like serious and then like the edgy, almost like early mid 2000s weird high school punk movie merged together. And I mean that's just my hypothesis. I could be totally wrong on that. Or studios in the way that they usually do are like, hey, we're giving you $5 million. Like we're not just gonna let some punk make a movie, completely with unfettered access to whatever he wants. Like the studio sat down as like, now this ending's a little, funky. Let's make a serious ending. I don't know, but those are kind of my guesses. Just the way that like the characters are written, the world feels, the music used in certain situations. Even the edginess of the story. That's kind of how How do I feel about it? I don't know. I mean, am I way off base? Do you not feel that way at all?
I mean, I see your perspective,
So
but
I'm wrong. I
also
got it. Noted. Noted.
no, 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 that's not what I said. I really like that it follows all the different characters and you really see
Mm-hmm.
how they interact with and connect to each other and like how intermingled all those relationships are. And I think like even though some of the characters are kind of caricatures of whatever trope they're playing into, it is interesting just to like see the varied characters that do exist. And it's so dramatic, like overly dramatic. It's like watching the movie version of the show Pretty Little Liars. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, the drama that is
Yeah.
happening. This
Yeah.
is ludicrous. But you, in an hour and 53 minutes, get to know a ton of characters pretty well. You go through this crazy story, which we haven't even said what, like, the big twist thing at the end is, in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, I don't know. Do we want to do that in the cinematography? We can talk about that or
Yeah,
dial it back.
let's do.
Okay. So cinematography wise, I think there's a lot of iconic shots in here. I mean, if you just search Donnie Darko on Google, you're gonna get 1,000 images of that one in the middle there of them sitting in the movie theater, and um, he's cut off a little bit there, but Jake Gyllenhaal is kind of on the left. His girlfriend's in the middle, and then Frank the rabbit is the guy, the creature, the thing he keeps seeing, telling him to do things and telling him, that the world's going to end and what have you. So, the cinematography is very competent. It's very well done. I mean, there's feels like there's some rogue shooting, like it is like a kid with a camera, kind of just like, hey man, let's wing it. Let's do this shot.
It's like trying to give you that sense of like you're here, you're just observing this. If you were to walk down this hallway or this way, this is what you would see.
Yeah. But then you can see something like there's Drew Barrymore there, like as the teacher, right? And it's a much differently framed shot. It's a much cleaner, it's a much more like on a dolly, you know, doing a very studio esque shot of a particular scene, um, compared to some of the other stuff that's in the movie, or at least when it's following Donnie around and things like that. So, um, it's a there was never a point in time where it was like, oh, that's an ugly shot. Why would you ever do that? I mean, it for again a 26-year-old. I'm assuming the studio armed him with some pretty good cinematographers and everything else to make sure that this was kind of a success. But it looks great. It's filmed great, color grading wise. You definitely have this. You can see both in the yellowed ones. You kind of have a sepia style tone. Things are almost blurred in a way, kind of feel dreamy sometimes, dreamlike sequences. Um, so yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it had a really interesting kind of look to it, and it fit the vibe of the movie really well. I would say that's kind of the way I felt about it.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with all that. And also say, like, some of the shots also had these really funky effects to them. Like, we talked about the spherical liquid thing or
Mm-hmm.
tubular thing coming out of him. But then also, we didn't talk about, like, when he's talking to Frank and he's like looking in the mirror talking to him, and he would do a lot of these shots where he's
Mm-hmm.
like face looking down at the eyes, kind of like, whoa, that's really
Sinistery
creepy.
kind of.
Yeah, kind of thing. And but it would almost be like he was tapping on something, and you would see like the vibration of the like whatever pain was there, and it was kind of in a way, I guess, going back to like the two different parallel universes or whatever you want to call them, of like he's not from here kind of thing. Because it's just, I think without Frank, this movie would have been very different. But he's so creepy, and that voice he uses is so creepy. And what are the things he makes Donnie do? Um, Flood the school
Yep. Yep. Floods the
and
school.
kind of vandalize the
He
school and the mascot
he
and
burns
stuff.
down Patrick Swayze's house.
And he exposes Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, so all of these things played into one another, right? It was while he was doing it, it wasn't almost even just as destructive. It was a natural to create a natural sequence of events, which ultimately led to the, I guess, demise of his universe, right, or his timeline,
Right.
or what have you.
Yeah, like everyone, like things were impacting, and the thing though at the beginning when he walks home and they're all like, "It landed in your room. You should have died," for the like jet engine thing that fell in the
Mm-hmm.
house. They didn't know where it came from,
Yeah.
and that's like the whole like we're not supposed to talk about it. They're not sure where it came from. So then, because of all these things that happened, because of Donnie, because of Frank, there's a thing at the end where the mom ends up going with the little sister in a plane
Yeah, she's flying home or something from a trip, right? It's
for the trip, the dance troupe
yeah,
thing, and it hits a vortex.
yeah,
It's like the rift between the two universes or
yes,
something. But then it's like, wait, if this is a thing like from the future, I guess that's where it brings back the sci-fi part of it of like, is it time travel? Is it different alternate universes? Is it parallel? Like what? I don't know all the intricacies of that. But then it shoots you back to right before the jet engine fell and Donnie's in his room and he does die.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the natural completion of this out of sync cycle or whatever it is, right? And so,
Like,
uh oh, Skype freaking out. I see it resized the
oh
video.
no,
What's
it's
going on?
tiny.
What's going on? It's tiny. Yeah,
I
why did
don't
it
know.
do
You
that?
like froze for a second, and then all of a sudden I was talking while you were talking because I didn't know you were talking, and then
Oh,
I got
see,
tiny, and
then it
now I'm
got
very.
now it got resized again. I don't know. I don't know, man. Don't get mad at me. I didn't break it. Uh,
I'm not getting mad at.
you're so angry at me right now. Stop yelling.
I'm very angry, Chrissy.
Yeah, so there is some kind of like interesting loop back around stuff. That's where again I didn't read into it because I mean I'm sure it's a dime a dozen as like what does the end of Donnie Darko mean or what Donnie Darko explained kind of thing. I there's some things I really want to know about that, but other times I'm like let me let it like marinate for a while and see if I can kind of like
Mm.
figure it out. And this is one of those that I was thinking about that, and it kind of seems like it feels like there are over like it is almost like a loop. Like the airplane engine that landed on his thing was a like a natural progression of like an in between world, and his parents or his mom and sister that were coming back. I imagine it's like their plane that is dropping an engine in a different loop yet again, starting that over. Like there's going to be
Okay.
another Donnie that survives or whatever, and it just kind of naturally keeps going around in that weird continuous way. But I don't know. That was kind of the way that I was sort of like reading into it, and it's sort of weird. And the other thing that I we kind of failed to mention is the book that he is kind of reading some of the stuff through is from
Right. Yeah.
a lady that's like already living there and kind of crazy, and it makes it seem like she's lived through the same thing that Donnie has.
Because she
Um,
keeps checking her mailbox and it's always empty, but then she eventually gets the letter.
yeah, yes, and so that's kind of like it's kind of like a weird thing that it's like you can tell that this is not the first time that it's happened sort of thing. And I don't
Right.
know if they were trying to go for like the government cover uppy thing, and that's why when the engine landed, it was like they don't know where it came from, but maybe they do, maybe they do know where it came from and they just don't want to tell anybody about it, and here's some hush money or whatever.
I think I think an important thing too that we have there's just so many things to this movie. It's like an onion, there's so many layers. So before we even vortexed back, it was like, no, this is good that this was reset because up to this point, Donnie had like really impacted a lot of people, but also people died. Because then there was like, okay, his sister gets into Harvard. So they're having this party because parents are out of town. And you meet Frank as like a real person who's there at this Halloween party in this bunny costume. and him and his Donnie and his girlfriend left to go find this woman whose time travel book he'd been reading, and they get ambushed by Seth Rogen and his thug friend, and then Frank, the real human Frank, ends up hitting Donnie's girlfriend with his car and killing
Mm-hmm.
her. And then Donnie shoots Frank, which there were
Yes,
parts
the
that
real
like kind
Frank,
of
right?
foreshadow
Yeah.
that. Right, like the human Frank, who you find out later is also, or around that time, is the boyfriend who Donnie's sister was on the phone with all the time.
Yeah. So there's some really weird like tie back around stuff, and it's sort of like the I would argue 10 characters that you deal with throughout the movie are all the 10 characters that they interface with something or link to each other somehow in the end anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool, and I was like, "Whoa, oh
yeah.
my gosh!" So I really like stories like that, where things like all just come together, and you see how they fit and everything. And then at the end, you think about it, and there was one part in the book where it was like, "There will be remnants of the alternate path," or something like that. And then at the end, he dies, and then so the scene out in front of the house after the accident is very different, where his girlfriend, instead of like being all with him and then getting killed in the car accident, drives by on her bike and she's like, "Hey, who died?"
Yeah.
And then she waves at the mom and they like wave at each other as almost as if they kind of recognize each other.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying is it kind of sets it up for that like the clash of timelines or clash of universes whatever took place, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're in this other one, right? It kind of reset, you're in the other one and the other one won. So, um yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thinker. I hate to call a movie a thinker. I feel like so old. I feel like, yeah, that movie's a real head scratcher, but it is one of those that is kind of at least makes you think. So if you're in it for like, it's kind of a day in the life of a disturbed kid, because it's
Yeah.
basically follows his days. It doesn't like jump around or anything like that. So, and I can't remember if it's like 3 days out or is it like a week or something from when he first starts hearing all these things, seeing things. So it takes,
4 weeks.
yeah,
But it jumps like sporadically
yeah.
through because it starts on October 2nd and then it goes to the 30th.
Yeah, so you just kind of follow like his days through that, and it's kind of an interesting little layout. So, uh,
It's fun. So, what was
yeah,
the
that's what I was
reception
gonna hop
like?
onto. So let's see what other people thought about this. So, it's kind of all over the.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
so
it's a little
low.
all over the place. So I mean, it's above average. I mean, in a way, it's 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually pretty good compared to what a lot of other films are. So, the audience is kind of divided. It's right in the middle. Roger Ebert always has low scores on everything, dude. I don't know what it is, but they're 2 out of their 5. IGN 6.8 said it's okay. Metacritic, both the critic and audience scores are about the same as kind of like Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb, same thing, 6.6. So, here's what I would say about that though: is usually the most divisive films are kind of some of the most interesting or fun to watch because people don't really know what to make of it. You're gonna have people that are like absolutely love it. It was great. It was for them. And then there's going to be people that are like, no, this is horrible. It's dog shit. I don't care about it. So, I to me, these are the ones that it's like, yeah, you should watch and figure out if you like it or not because it's if something is hundreds everywhere, you're probably gonna like it. There's no fun, exciting ride to really be had there going into it. You know what you're gonna get. You buy a chocolate bar, you're gonna get a chocolate bar, but so I don't know. I mean, I guess we need to figure out kind of where we thought it would go as well. Do we want to give our rating right here?
Yes, I am ready. You go first.
Well, I will. This is kind of a weird one for me because, like, I mean, there is a part of me that feels like this isn't so wrong. Like, what I see here is kind of my gut check for this. It does feel like it's, sort of in the middle. It's definitely above like average. Like I don't think it's a um, like a 50%, like a 5 out of 10 or something like that, right?
Okay.
So I'm leaning more towards. It's tough because it's not exactly a horror movie either. It's like it is a thriller. It's a psychological thriller. Cinematography's good. I think soundtrack's good. Casting was great. There was nobody that I was like, ooh, that person was a bad choice. Why'd you go with that? Um, I'm kind of like, I honestly think it's a very competent film, but I like my gut is telling me six, like six bullet shots to the eyeball in a bunny man suit, out of 10. That's kind of what I'm feeling like. So I don't know. Where are you at? Is this like your perfect 10? Is that what you're?
It's
Uh-oh.
close. It's not the perfect 10, but I did watch it multiple times and I would watch it again. And so for me, it's like, that's a good movie because um, there are very few things that I'm like, I'm going to watch it multiple times. But then when I do, I watch it like 80 times, kind of like
Yeah,
when I watched Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, like 30 times one
yeah.
summer. Um,
Those are good movies.
you know, so I might watch it a few more times. But that was great. The soundtrack, amazing. Mad World, that song, I remember being obsessed with it when I was a kid, and I'm like,
That movie made it. That movie
whoa,
made that song.
this movie was why I liked it, and this is what I remember from this movie. But no, it was great. Like, I love the soundtrack, I love the costumes, I love the references to like Dukakis and all the
Yeah. Oh
political
yeah.
stuff in there. There were just, like, things that like placed where it was in time, and it really felt like that
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
And like you said, the casting was beautiful. Even though some of the characters were like a little dramatic, they were like, I felt about them. I did not like many of these
Yeah.
characters, um, and for various reasons. But I thought, like, I liked the conversations that took place too. There were a few elements that I feel like I'm still kind of like, I'm not really sure. Like, there was that one girl that they would always
Oh
make fun of at
yeah.
the bus stop.
Yes.
And I'm like, nothing really ever came of that other than you, like, kind of found out that she was in love with Donnie
Yep. Yep.
Darko. Um, but I feel like you could kind of pick up on that anyways. But then there was no real, like, tie back to
Nope.
her. So I just feel like there's some elements too that I'm left questioning a little bit, which I do not like. Like, tell me, or I'm gonna want to
You gotta
know,
know.
or I guess I'll just write a sequel. Just gotta. So I mean, I would give this one a
Oof.
9 because like I really liked it a lot, but there are still some parts that I'm like, nah, I'm
See,
good.
that's that's your Roger and Ebert level review right there. There are parts that I like, but there are some that I'm like, nah, I'm good.
So I'm gonna give this 9 like, like squeals of oh my gosh, like this is intense, but it's not horror. It's not like super scary, except for some of the Frank
Okay.
parts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of so that's where I say like review wise, I don't think it's completely crazy. I'm kind of middle of the line. I'm like, yeah, there's things that I appreciate about it. I like it. I think about the other things that we've watched and how I rated those, and I was like, damn, to put this on kind of the same level as some of the other stuff that I really enjoyed, I just couldn't do it. And I mean, you like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with
I
that.
loved
But that's
it.
what I'm saying is so you're
Yeah.
you're the person that kind of brings up that average, right? That's why it is the way that it is. So um, yeah, I mean, cool. I like that. I think that's a good spot to leave it. Do we want to talk about similar movies and why we picked those? Okay,
Yes.
hop over there. I'll let you go first. You can go first with your pick.
I thought that this was very similar to the butterfly effect in the like specifically because of those special effects of like the vortexy looking things or like the weird like woo woo kind of sound stuff. Like you get a lot of that in the butterfly effect when he's like doing his time travel, but then it's also that same idea of like everything you do impacts the timeline and impacts other people and shutters out and affects other people in that same way. It's not like as straightforward as like that's the main theme of the movie, The Butterfly Effect, but it's definitely something that like is a big plot point in Donnie Darko.
Yeah, you know, and I was thinking through that too. It's been a really long time since I've seen the Butterfly Effect, but it came out in 2004, which is not far off from like the time Donnie Darko came out. So visually, like effect wise and stuff like that, I would imagine they all feel
Uh-huh.
kind of
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, very, very similar early 2000s digital
Yeah.
effects.
Um, well, I picked The Machinist. I don't. Have you ever seen The Machinist?
Yes, I watched it one
Yeah.
time while doing something
I
else. So
think
I have seen parts of
I think that's probably the answer a lot of people gave. But it's the Machinist. It's Christian Bale. It's one of those roles. He's most notable for losing ridiculous amounts of weight.
Yeah,
For
he got like
he
real
he looks
skinny
like
for it.
Skeletor basically, and they touch on that a lot in the movie. But it's definitely a psychological thriller. A lot of like him blacked out, kind of memories, not remembering things, and so as he talks to people, he starts to, piece things together, understand, what events happened, and his character doesn't sleep. He's always awake, so he's just always has this kind of ghoulish, like drained look of it.
Okay.
Um, and so
Oh,
it is this. It's really shot in a. I mean, like cinematography wise, it's a really great looking film. But there's a lot of things that reminded me between Donnie Darko and The Machinist, just in terms of like character development, the type of story. There's no like supernatural element to it. There's no time travel-y, multi-dimensional stuff. It really is a character suspense thriller, almost mystery in a way. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it that reminded me of Donnie Darko. So I think if you like Donnie Darko, you probably would like The Machinist.
okay. Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm remembering bits and pieces of it. Maybe that's when I'll revisit and actually
Yeah, and that one I
watch.
think ends really well. I like the ending to that movie, so that's one that I'm like,
Okay.
I like that quite a bit. So. Well, I can't remember if I had the final word last time, or if you had the final word. You want to have the final word this time and send us all off, and then whatever
Or
that
then
means.
we'll
Is
do
that
an alternative video ending.
yeah? I don't.
Um, well, Matt, thanks for talking, not necessarily horror, but science fiction, psychological thriller to me.
We got to change the name of the whole podcast now. So. Oh.
No. So we'll just classify this as
It,
horror at the end
it's
of
on
that.
Shudder.
Thriller
It's on
horror.
Shudder if you want to watch it. It's on Shudder, and so Shudder's a horror movie service. So by definition, it has to be horror. So it's there if you want to watch it. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Final word. Oh,
Goodbye.
goodbye. Shit. Now I had the final word.